You are worth far more than you are currently charging. And I don't mean money. I mean your time, your attention, your energy, your presence. The rare, irreplaceable, completely non-renewable resource that is you, your hours, your focus, your emotional investment, and the fact that you have been distributing it freely, generously, and without discrimination to people and situations that have given you almost nothing in return. You have been, in the most precise sense of the word, cheap, not because you're weak, not because you don't know your worth, but because somewhere along the way you learned that making yourself available to everyone, at all times, for whatever they needed, was how you proved your value. That saying yes was virtue. That putting yourself last was strength. That the person who gives the most is somehow the most worthy. And that belief, quiet, deeply embedded, almost never examined, has been costing you everything. This video is about becoming expensive, and not one person who needs to hear that understands what it actually means yet. Let's name what's actually happening. You are in relationships, friendships, professional situations, perhaps even a romantic partnership, where the exchange is fundamentally unequal, where you are the one who shows up, who initiates, who remembers, who adjusts, who absorbs, who gives, and the other person receives, sometimes gratefully, sometimes without even noticing. You say yes when you mean no, because the cost of disappointing someone feels higher than the cost of disappointing yourself. And you have made that calculation so many times, so automatically, that you've stopped noticing you're making it. You overshare yourself in conversations, your ideas, your plans, your vulnerabilities, before trust has been established, before reciprocity has been demonstrated, and then you wonder why you feel exposed, why you feel depleted, why, after certain interactions, you feel like something was taken from you that you never agreed to give. You are available, constantly, consistently, predictably, and the people who benefit most from your availability are often the ones who value it least, because things that cost nothing are treated as though they are worth nothing. Here's the hidden problem underneath all of that. You don't have a generosity problem. You have a value problem. Not your inherent worth. That is not in question, but your relationship with your own value, your understanding of yourself as a finite resource, your willingness to treat your time, your attention, and your presence with the same level of discernment that you would apply to anything genuinely precious. Diamonds are valuable not only because they are rare, but because they are treated as rare, because access to them requires something. You have been behaving like sand, and there was an ancient philosopher who understood the precise mechanism of this, who wrote about self-worth, self-governance, and the relationship between how you treat yourself and how the world treats you, with a clarity that 2,000 years has not diminished. His name was Epictetus, and what he knew about the cost of giving yourself away will permanently change how you show up in every relationship you have. There is a story, not from ancient Rome, but from the middle of the 20th century, that illustrates this principle more precisely than almost anything else I know. A young psychiatrist arrives at his first major hospital posting, brilliant, eager, desperate to be liked and accepted by the senior physicians who surround him. And so he makes himself available, stays late every time someone asks, takes on cases that should go to others, says yes to every request, attends every meeting, volunteers for every task that no one else wants. Within 6 months, he is exhausted, resentful, and, here is the part that surprises him most, not particularly respected. The colleagues who benefit most from his availability treat him as a resource, not as a peer. He is useful, not valued. He brings this to his own therapist, expecting sympathy, and his therapist says something that changes the trajectory of his entire career. You have taught them exactly how to treat you. Every time you said yes when you meant no, every time you absorbed what should have been someone else's burden, you were training them. They learned that your time is free, that your energy has no cost, that you can be accessed without reciprocity. You did this, and you can undo it, but only by becoming someone different, not someone colder, someone more expensive. This principle, this understanding that we train people how to treat us through our own behavior, is not modern psychology. It is ancient philosophy, translated. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. Don't wish to be thought to know anything. And if some people think you are important, distrust yourself." He was describing the cost of performing worth rather than embodying it, the exhaustion of trying to earn through availability what can only be established through self-governance. And Seneca, who watched this dynamic play out across the most powerful court in the ancient world, wrote something even more direct. Omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is foreign to us. Only time is ours. And the moment you start treating your time as the precious, sovereign, genuinely irreplaceable thing it is, everything around you begins to reorganize. But first, you need to understand exactly why you've been giving it away. The Stoics identified 3 interlocking reasons why intelligent, capable, self-aware people give themselves away for free. 3 psychological mechanisms that run so deep they feel like personality rather than pattern. And each one can be directly interrupted, once you see it clearly. The first mechanism, approval as currency. From the earliest age, most people learn that being liked is safety, that approval, from parents, teachers, peers, authority figures, determines your access to good things, love, belonging, opportunity, security. And so the mind constructs a strategy: be helpful, be available, be what people need, and the approval will follow, and the approval will keep you safe. The strategy works in childhood, and it becomes catastrophic in adulthood. Because adult life does not reward chronic approval seeking. It rewards demonstrated value. And demonstrated value comes not from making yourself maximally available, but from being selective enough that your availability means something. Epictetus called this trap the pursuit of external goods at the cost of internal goods. He argued that everything you gain by making others like you, the warmth, the inclusion, the brief sense of mattering, is inherently unstable, because it depends on them, on their mood, on their need for you in that moment, on factors entirely outside your control. The only stable foundation for self-worth is internal, built from values, from discipline, from the consistent alignment between who you say you are and how you actually behave. That foundation cannot be withdrawn by someone else's change of opinion, and the person who has built it, the person who is not managed by the fear of disapproval, becomes genuinely magnetic, not because they are cold, but because they are certain. And certainty, in a world of chronic anxiety and performance, is extraordinarily rare, and therefore extraordinarily valuable. The second mechanism, confusing self-sacrifice with virtue. There is a version of generosity that is genuinely noble, that gives freely, without keeping accounts, without resentment, because it comes from abundance, and because giving is genuinely aligned with the giver's values. And there is a version that looks identical from the outside, and is completely different on the inside. That gives not from abundance, but from fear. That says yes, not from genuine desire, but from the terror of what saying no might cost. That sacrifices not from strength, but from the compulsive need to be needed. The Stoics were extremely precise about this distinction. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about the difference between acting from virtue, genuinely choosing the right thing because it is right, and acting from anxiety, doing the right-looking thing because the alternative feels too dangerous. The first produces a person who gives and feels enriched. The second produces a person who gives and feels drained, who builds resentment slowly, who eventually either collapses into exhaustion or hardens into bitterness. You already know which one you've been doing. And if you're honest with yourself, you've known for a while. The third mechanism, the belief that scarcity makes you dispensable. At the deepest level, the compulsion to give yourself away freely often rests on a specific fear. If I am not maximally useful, maximally available, maximally accommodating, I will be left behind. This fear tells you that your value is contingent, that without constant demonstration, without continuous service, without the perpetual offering of yourself as a resource, you will be found insufficient, replaced, forgotten. And this fear is not irrational. It has roots in experiences that were real, in moments where withdrawal of usefulness did produce withdrawal of affection, in environments where love was conditional on performance. But Epictetus, who lost everything, including his physical freedom, arrived at something that dismantles this fear completely. Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourself. The person who knows their own value, who has found it in themselves rather than in others' reactions to them, is immune to this fear, not because they don't care about connection, but because their sense of their own worth does not depend on whether any specific person chooses to stay. That immunity is what makes them expensive, not arrogance, not coldness, the quiet, unshakable certainty of someone who knows what they bring and is willing to wait for the environment that deserves it. So how do you actually build this? How do you go from giving yourself away reflexively, from the chronic yes, the bottomless availability, the depletion, to someone whose presence carries genuine weight? Lesson 1. Audit where your time actually goes. For 1 week, just 7 days, track every significant yes you say, not the small logistics of daily life, the substantive commitments of your time, your energy, your emotional presence. At the end of the week, ask 3 questions about each one. Did I genuinely want to do this? Or did I say yes from fear or obligation? Did this leave me feeling more alive or more depleted? If I knew then what I know now about the actual cost, would I have said yes? The audit is not about becoming stingy. It is about becoming conscious, about ending the automatic yes that runs beneath your awareness and replacing it with a deliberate choice. Because a yes that is genuinely chosen, that comes from alignment with your values rather than from anxiety, feels completely different. It energizes rather than drains. It creates connection rather than resentment. The goal is not to say yes less. It is to say yes better. Lesson 2. Let the pause become your policy. The single most powerful tool available to someone who struggles with over-availability is the simplest one. Stop responding immediately. Not forever, not coldly, but the reflexive, instant yes. The one that comes before you've even considered whether you want to. That needs a pause inserted before it. When someone makes a request of your time or energy, your new default response is, "Let me check and come back to you." Or, "I need to think about whether I can give this the attention it deserves." Or simply, "I'll let you know." This pause does 3 things. It gives you time to make an actual decision rather than a reactive one. It communicates, without any drama or explanation, that your yes is not automatic, that it means something. And it trains the people around you, slowly and consistently, that your time has weight, that it is worth waiting for, that it does not come free. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this as the discipline of the will, the practiced ability to introduce space between stimulus and response, to be the author of your own choices rather than the product of your own anxiety. That space is everything. Build it. Lesson 3. Stop over-explaining your no. A no is a complete sentence. This is the lesson that the people pleaser finds hardest, because the impulse, when declining something, is to apologize, justify, soften, compensate, to give such a thorough explanation for the no that the other person ends up feeling almost as served as if you'd said yes. This over-explanation does not protect the relationship. It signals insecurity. It communicates, I am not confident in this boundary, and I need your understanding to feel okay about it. The confident no needs no architecture. I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. Full stop. The discomfort you feel in the silence after that sentence, that is the discomfort of a new identity being built, of a pattern being interrupted. It passes, and what remains is the respect that a clean, unequivocal boundary almost always produces. Seneca wrote, "If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you need is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person." The no is the beginning of becoming that person. Lesson 4. Invest in yourself before you invest in being needed. Here is a pattern worth examining. How much time do you spend on other people's priorities compared to your own? How many hours go to being available, being responsive, being useful to others, versus the time spent on building the skills, the knowledge, the physical foundation, the inner life that makes you genuinely more valuable to bring to the world? The person who is perpetually available for others is almost always simultaneously neglecting themselves, and the neglect is not noble. It is the guarantee of a slower deterioration, of becoming less over time rather than more, because the source is never replenished. Epictetus was unequivocal. The work on the self is the primary work. Everything else is secondary, not because other people don't matter, but because a person who has not invested in themselves has less to give, less clarity to offer, less genuine presence to bring. They are giving from an empty account. Your development is not selfish. It is the prerequisite for everything useful you will ever offer to anyone. Lesson 5. Choose depth over breadth in your relationships. The expensive person does not try to maintain 20 close friendships. They invest deeply in a small number of relationships where the exchange is genuinely reciprocal, where both people are growing, both people are giving, both people are made more by the connection. The shallow relationship, the one maintained through obligation, proximity, or habit rather than genuine mutual investment, costs you something real every time you tend to it. Not because the person is bad, but because the exchange is not real. And maintaining the appearance of connection where the substance is absent is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." Apply this to relationships. The friction of reducing shallow connections is the exact work that creates space for deep ones. The temporary discomfort of letting certain relationships find their natural level, of investing less where less is returned, creates the time and energy for the connections that actually matter. Be willing to be less popular. Be willing to be more real. Lesson 6. Make your standards visible through your behavior, not your words. This is the most important one, and the most frequently misunderstood. Becoming expensive is not an announcement. It is not a declaration. It is not a speech you give to the people in your life about what you will no longer tolerate. It is a change in behavior. Quiet, consistent, unremarkable to anyone watching from the outside, but completely unmistakable in its effects. When you stop answering every message within minutes, people begin to sense that your attention is not guaranteed. When you decline invitations that don't genuinely interest you, people begin to notice that your presence has been chosen. When you stop volunteering your opinions to everyone who might listen and start offering them only where they're genuinely sought, they land differently. They carry weight they couldn't carry before. Your standards become legible through repetition, through consistency, through the accumulated pattern of 100 small choices, each one a vote for the person you're becoming. Epictetus said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do, not the other way around. The identity first, then the behavior that proves it, to you, before anyone else." Here is what your life looks like when you genuinely become expensive. The relationships that remain are the ones that were real, The ones that couldn't survive your new standards were never the connections you thought they were. Their departure is not loss, it is clarity. The opportunities that arrive begin to match the person you've become, because the world responds to demonstrated value with extraordinary precision. When you stop making yourself universally available, you become selectively desirable. And selective desirability attracts different offers, different collaborations, different relationships, ones built on genuine mutual respect rather than convenience. Your energy, the finite, irreplaceable daily resource that determines the quality of everything you produce and everyone you love, stops leaking, because every yes is now a genuine choice. Every commitment is now an aligned one, and aligned action does not deplete the way anxious performance does. It compounds, and perhaps most profoundly, the relationship you have with yourself changes. Because every time you honor your own standard, every time you make the deliberate choice rather than the reflexive one, every time you say the clean no or the genuine yes, you prove something to yourself, something that cannot be proven any other way, that you can be trusted, that your word to yourself means something, that you are not for sale, and the person who knows, in their bones, that they are not for sale, who has built that knowledge through the accumulation of 1,000 small, unglamorous, unwitnessed choices, that person walks through the world differently, not with arrogance, with gravity, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, the kind that rooms feel before you've said a word. That is what expensive actually means. Epictetus owned nothing. He had been a slave. He walked with a limp from an injury that his former master inflicted. He had no title, no inheritance, no external marker of status or importance. And he was, by every account of those who encountered him, one of the most powerful presences in the ancient world. Students traveled from across the empire to sit with him. Emperors sent their children to study under him. His words, recorded by a student who loved him, became the philosophical foundation for some of the most capable and self-possessed human beings in history. Not because of what he had, because of what he would not surrender. His time, his attention, his values, his judgment, his inner world, the sovereign territory that no master, no exile, no injury had ever managed to reach. He was expensive, in the only way that ultimately matters. And what he understood, what this entire video has been building toward, is something devastatingly simple. You cannot become valuable to the world by making yourself cheap to it. The more freely you distribute yourself, your presence, your approval, your availability, the less any single instance of it means. The more you protect it, the more deliberate you are about where it goes and why, the more it matters when it arrives. You are not required to be available to everyone. You are not obligated to say yes to everything. You are not defined by your usefulness to people who have never invested in you. You are a finite resource, a rare one, and rare things are not given away freely. They are offered, carefully, selectively, and only where they will be genuinely received, to the world that deserves them. Start acting like it. If this video said something you've been waiting to hear, if one of those lessons is still sitting in your chest, I want you to do one thing before you close this tab. Identify the one place in your life where you are most underpaying yourself. The relationship, the situation, the habit that is taking your time and returning almost nothing. Just one. And decide, quietly, without drama, without announcement, to start charging more. Subscribe to this channel, because every single week, this is what we do. We take the deepest wisdom ever written and translate it into the clearest, most usable form possible for your actual life. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, share this with someone who has been giving themselves away for free for too long, because the next video is going to say something about who you've been settling for that you're not going to be able to unhear. Don't miss it.